Hi, thank you everyone for joining us for this exciting presentation on the international perspective to achieving Vision Zero. We have a great panel that will share the policy framework these countries have instituted to achieve their zero goals, successful tools and strategies to move in this direction, their approach to modernizing transportation with safety as their priority, and a case study of operating a multimodal transportation operations center. Before we get into the presentation, a few housekeeping items. If you aren't presenting, please keep your camera off and stay muted. We have reserved roughly 20 minutes at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. Please put any questions you have in the chat and I'll try to filter through as many of them as I can at the end of this presentation. With that, I'd like to pass the camera on to Tim McCall, WSDOT's Olympic Region Traffic Management Center's manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. So good morning, everybody. Just want to introduce the panel on this webinar this morning. First, we have John Milton. John Milton is the state safety engineer for Washington State Department of Transportation in the United States. He has 35 years experience in multimodal safety, planning, design, and traffic operations. He is working nationally and internationally on implementation of the SAFE system approach. Milton received his Doctor of Philosophy degree from the University of Washington and is a licensed professional engineer, a certified road safety professional for infrastructure and behavior, and a professional traffic operations engineer. Milton is the chair of the World Road Association, PIARC, Technical Committee on Road Safety, vice chair for the Committee on Safety for the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, a member of the United States National Committee to PIARC, and past safety section chair for the Transportation Research Board, or TRB. Second, we have Dr. Yinhai Wang. Dr. Wang is a professor in both the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department and Electrical Engineering Department of the University of Washington. He has served as director for the Pacific Northwest Transportation Consortium, PacTrans, WSDOT University Transportation Center for the Federal Region 10, since 2012, and director for the Northwestern Tribal Technical Assistance Program, NWTTAP Center, since 2022. His active research fields include traffic sensing, AI methods and applications, transportation data science, edge computing, transportation safety, traffic operations and simulation, and smart urban mobility. He has published nearly 300 peer-reviewed journal articles with over 18,900 citations on Google Scholar. It's quite impressive. He received the 2023 ASCE Francis E. Turner Award and the Institute of Transportation Engineers Innovation and Education Award for 2018. His research work also has been recognized by numerous paper awards, such as the 2022 Outstanding Paper Award from the IEEE International Conference on Digital Twins and Parallel Intelligence, IEEE International Smart Cities Conference's Best Paper Award for 2020, and the ASCE Journal of Transportation Engineering Best Paper Award for 2003. He is a professional engineer registered in Washington, a member of the Washington State Academy of Sciences, a distinguished member of the ASCE, and a fellow of both IEEE and ITE. Next, we have Dong-Ho Chang. Dong-Ho is the State Traffic Engineer and Director of Transportation Operations for the Washington State Department of Transportation, or WSDOT. He has worked for over 30 years in the transportation engineering field, improving accessibility and safety for communities. Prior to rejoining WSDOT, Dong-Ho served as city traffic engineer for two large cities in Washington, Everett and Seattle. Dong-Ho is a licensed professional engineer, graduated with Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering and Master of Public Administration at the University of Washington. Lastly, I'm the Washington State Department of Transportation Olympic Region Freeway Operations Manager, where I lead both the Regional Traffic Management Center and Incident Response Team, our Safety Service Patrol operation here with WSDOT. Graduated from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. Got 18 years experience in transportation operations, including 17 years with WSDOT and 1 year with the City of Seattle's Transportation Operations Division. Now I'm going to yield the floor to Mr. John Milton for his presentation. Take it away.
And thanks, Tim. Let me first start by saying what I'm going to be doing today is talking about implementation of the safe system approach. I'm going to give you perspective, and that perspective that I'm presenting is really what I've derived from the research and what I found essentially what's happening internationally. And often there may be some disagreement as to did one nation or another nation do this work first. I don't want to get into that when we have this discussion, but I did want to start with a discussion about where are we in Washington State because it ties into this overall discussion. If you look at where we are in the state, we've seen ups and downs for a number of different reasons. And the reason that you see the safe system approach is it really is about how do you get to zero and how do you move the number and the needle down? It's a philosophy of design, of operations, of planning. It's not just this singular thing that ends and results in zero crashes, but a series of actions that occur within a nation or within a state or even at a city level. But what you're seeing in Washington State is an increase right now, about 85 increase from 2013 to 2023 in fatal and serious car crashes. And the question I often get is why is that occurring? It's occurring in part because of the behaviors we see changing on the road, but also how the road operates and what the vehicles do in terms of their ability to withstand crashes in a very significant high energy crash. So if I can go back here, I wanted you to see essentially a comparison in the United States versus other high income countries. If you look at the very top there, and I hope you can see this well enough, this is a chart on deaths per 100,000 population. If you look at the top number, that's the United States. The United States is sitting at about 11.1 deaths per 100,000 population. If you look at comparison in terms of the average, it's 4.8. 4.8 for other high income countries. You can see that we're well in excess of everybody else. The low number is 2.0 in Norway. And the question is, what's different there? There's a lot of things that are different, but the primary thing that you'll see in terms of these countries that we're seeing significant advancement is that they're implementing strategies related to Vision Zero, the safe system. Those are different names, but really the same thing. And they have a idea essentially of how to design and operate that kind of sits in all that they do. It's not just this one-off type of thing. It is a practice and a journey that each one of them are taking. They didn't all start essentially at 2.0 or 4.8. They brought their numbers down over a great deal of time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the implementation of the SAFE system. This is the Netherlands. If you look in the 1990s, it's when the Netherlands really started their journey towards the SAFE system. The picture I'm showing you here is a prime example of how they look at road safety. You can see it's a two-lane city street uh, with a vehicle, but then there is separation to excuse me, that vehicle is a parked vehicle. So the lane is to the left, and then that parked vehicle protects the bicycle path. The bicycles that you see on the right here essentially protect the surface for walking. So you can see that surface, the idea that there's separation is a very, very important part of how they design in the Netherlands. When you look at the principles that occurred in the Netherlands, they really worked on the functionality of roads and homogeneity of mass or speed in direction. What that is really in our terms is it's about separation. You don't mix high mass vehicles with low mass people because when you have a crash, essentially the low mass vehicle or the low mass person essentially is the one that's going to suffer the most damage. The other thing that they really focused on when they started their journey was predictability, understanding essentially from the person who is using the road of what's necessary, what they need to do, how they need to operate within the system. The next thing that you see is in 2005, they added forgiveness of the environment and of road users. So when people make mistakes, essentially, they're not going to die because of those mistakes. So a lot of this was focusing on the roadside design, the roadside operation. For instance, putting in barriers, putting in centerline barrier, edge line barrier, breakaway cable terminals were not something essential that they were allowing, but they worked really hard on that particular aspect. And then the final thing that they had was state awareness of road users. So understanding and essentially trying to drive out distraction, trying to make people aware that, hey, on the system, you need to be aware that there are other people other than you just in a vehicle. Now, this slide I'm showing is really, they began to think about in 2018 as they're moving forward with their implementation of the safe system, or what they call sustainable safety, is about they brought in the idea of hierarchy of needs. So to eliminate, to minimize, to mitigate were the three principles. So that's how they look at design overall. The picture I'm showing you here is a roundabout. And that roundabout is not for vehicles, it's a roundabout for bicycles. It's in Eindhoven, Netherlands, and it is basically there to provide that separation that's necessary. And then the way that they look at this and their design in the Netherlands is that one road user doesn't benefit over another road user. It's the safe system for all. So here, the idea that they're providing for bikes, you might say, well, there's not a lot of bikes. Well, in the Netherlands, there are, but their philosophy, their thinking, their process really got into essentially allowing for that. The principles become functionality of roads, biomechanics. So limiting differences in speed, direction, mass, and size, and giving road users appropriate protection was one of their functions now as they go into their further implementation of the sustainable safety. They got into psychologics, or what we might call human factors, aligning the design of the road environment with the road user competencies, and then effectively allocating responsibility, our shared responsibility, and learning and innovating in traffic safety systems. Just an idea, they have 3,817 roundabouts. So their implementation is much further along than what we might see in Washington State. The next country, and we often hear about Sweden as one of the primary factors in designing the safe system overall, they started with Vision Zero. Indifferent in their approach as compared to what you had with sustainable safety, they really got into the philosophy as a moral obligation to bring that crash rate down to zero. In their country, it was as much about the design, but also about the willingness of the public to accept and understand what was expected of them in terms of road safety. They came up with a philosophy that no one should be killed or seriously injured in crashes. They really focused on setting targets and goals so that they would know and they could track where they were getting and the benefits that they were getting for how they were designing the system. They also talked about allocation of responsibility for the prevention of injuries and essentially said that we can no longer, as a community, not address safety even when it's a behavioral issue. We need to do something. We need to look at the system and see what we can change to make things better. It's our idea with forgiving roadsides that you see in the US, essentially where we are designing roads for errors. If you think about it, why do we put rumble strips? Why do we put barriers? It's because people run off the road and they run off because of errors. We need to further that sort of thinking into everything that we do for walking and biking and for people and vehicles. The final thing was that they needed to be proactive. Don't wait for the crashes to occur, because if you wait, essentially you'll never get to zero. So as this moved on, essentially in 2004, it was the Australian and New Zealand. That's when it really became the safe system approach. So in 2004 in Australia, you see it in 2010, New Zealand. And if you look at what they did in their country, essentially, was they brought in the philosophy, you'll see a lot of metrics in graphics that are similar to what we're doing in the US. But their action plan was to really focus on the enabling activities that would help get to the safe system. So a lot of what they were doing was changing the decision-making processes, essentially as to how you make a choice within design and operations. What's fundamental to get to a low energy crash? How do we go about making those decisions? They really focused on data and measures of transformation of the system. So I'm out there making a change. Am I tracking that change so that I can learn from that change? But also, how much change am I actually putting out and where am I doing that? They're very focused on research and also supporting of local governments. Now, their priorities were really to focus on infrastructure investment and planning. So, this is something that's really important for us to learn in the United States. Without focusing on that planning part, essentially working with the public and dealing with elected officials and all those things that really go on at the beginning of the project, if you don't start the project right, you're not going to get it right in the very end. And in the US, the issue of speed is kind of a near and dear one to many people's hearts, but it is something that we're going to have to focus on in planning to get people to understand if we want to implement the system, how's the community think about it? What do they need to know? What is the information that they can get that will help them get the understanding of what is needed in terms of safety, reduced speeds, whatever it may be, roundabouts, all those kind of things. They also looked at regional and road safety. So the safe system in many people's mind is about addressing just local suburban and urban situations. It's not, it's about everything. It's about hitting and working on those areas in rural situations by putting in barriers and those types of things. Workplace safety also was very important. And they also focused on locations of equity, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people. They really wanted to get to vulnerable road users, and you see a lot of work in their processes to hit that. And then risky road use was the other part. One thing that you'll also see that I think is really important and something that we're trying to implement at the national level is the idea of this exposure, likelihood, and severity. By understanding and having a common definition of safety, and not just as a one factor sort of issue, it's about what changes. If I bring in new vehicles, what should I expect? Well, you should expect crashes to go up, bottom line, because exposure goes up, so do the crashes. The likelihood is about what we do and how we design the facility. And then severity is about mass and speed primarily. It is about reducing kinetic energy at the time of a crash. They also brought in the idea of treatment hierarchy. Some roads essentially will get a much higher level of design than other roads. So they have primary transformations. They also talk about supporting roads. So their investment scenario is not all everything. It is really focused to try to get that. We're all unconstrained environments. We all need to make some pretty hard choices, but their approach is really effective overall. So I wanted to show you in the context of what we're doing in Washington, but also we're seeing probably more of this occurring now at the national level, is that we talk about exposure, likelihood, and severity of crashes. When you make a choice in design, for instance, adding a left turn pocket, I always like highlighting this. That change may be a beneficial thing for safety, but it also may have counteractive effects. If you think about, I've now added a left turn pocket because I want to reduce rear enders or I want to reduce angle at crashes. I've probably now increased exposure. I've likely increased exposure for people walking and biking unless I put into that system uh, protected movements, for instance, or leading intervals. There's a trade-off to every decision that you make. And when you look at safety as they do in Australia, are able to do that type of assessment. The other thing that you see when you add a left turn pocket is increase in speed. That increase in speed is increase in severity. So overall, the idea behind this is that once you've made these decisions, take a look and equitably treat all road users and essentially make modifications to their systems as well as necessary to achieve the safe system. The other thing that I find really interesting in terms of what they did was movement in place. And really, this is about understanding that not all things are treated the same. Movement in place is like our context system, but it's a little bit more established than that. In Australia, they look at precincts where people take primarily the road. They look at local street systems, urban streets, which have different design characteristics and different needs, and then into movement corridors, which are more favorable to the vehicle versus maybe other road users, and then motorways, which were significant arterials that are primarily for vehicles overall. The idea behind this is not all things can be treated the same, and you need to understand the context to be able to make decisions that are consistent with that context and the likely road user. The other principle that they bring into this, and you'll hear a lot more about it, is the self-explaining roads. The Netherlands had really self-enforcing roads. Self-explaining roads were one that is about simplicity. It's about being able to achieve fewer errors because people understand what's necessary of them. Self-enforcing roads helps constrain those types of behaviors, for instance, speed, risky road taking, overtaking, for instance, in locations where we put barriers so that people can't cross over the center line. I'll talk a little bit about the decade of action. I know I don't have a lot of time here, but the second decade of action is really something that was focused on internationally. This is what's adopted across through the UN criteria, but what you'll see over most of Europe, many parts of Asia, as well as Africa. And this is really about targets, about understanding what you're doing in trying to achieve those safety goals. I wanted to bring in this document, the Safe System in Action, ITF 2022. This document was created to help people on their journey along the safe system. And it has a number of different components that it looks at, but it is a way to measure maturity over time in what you're doing in trying to implement the safe system. And again, this is using the UN sort of metrics, but overall, I think it provides a very good process for us to take a look at. And then the Global Road Status Report. If you ever want to take a look at essentially how we are doing in comparison to everybody else and how other countries are doing, this is the document to take a look at. I wanted to show you a little bit about Washington State here. And what we have is the WSDOT on the left and the Washington State implementation of the SAFE system. What we focused on and what you see in the Washington State implementation, very different than, it's not very different, it's different than the FHWA USDOT application. And ours is much more in alignment with the process that you see internationally. And one key area that I want to highlight is that we added safer land use into our approach. That also exists in the international level, but the idea behind safer land use that we thought about, it's not just about land use, it's about land use interaction, it's about access control, and it's about the provision of multimodal opportunities within differing land use options. Roger Millar, the secretary, basically said what all crashes have in common are cars. When the public health community identifies the threat to public health, the first strategy is to separate people from the threat. Right on. I recognize that we are in a car-centric country and a car-centric economy, and that creates challenge for us overall. That said, we should provide the people we serve with viable options for driving, walkable, and transit-oriented land use that allows people to live, work, and play without resilience on cars. Separating from cars with smarter, safer land use saves lives. And I think Roger really said it extremely well, and he did that off the top of his head. I was there when he suggested this, and I wrote immediately to him. I said, hey, I need to get that. But the idea is, look, think about what we're doing, think about how things interact, think about the system, and you'll have a much better system overall. This is highlighted in our strategic highway safety plan. And with that, I thank you very much. I hope I did not go too far over time. And I will now hand it off to Dong Ho.
Don't know if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. So I wanted to give a perspective from our visit to Finland. So our governor and legislative leaders wanted to find out, what is happening in Washington State, and how can we learn from infrastructure and policies that is actually achieving the safety results that we're not seeing. So last December, we went to Finland to look at what are the things that they are doing compared to Washington State. And you can see here that our fatal numbers are increasing, while in Finland the numbers are actually trending in the right direction. Fatality per million residents, you can see that Finland compared to Washington State, it's about over 90% in the fatality. So they are achieving these, and what we really like to find out is how are they achieving that. They're using data to analyze, where resources and focus needs to occur. What they're seeing is that younger drivers and younger populations, they're seeing a consistent increase, higher rates than the rest of the populations. So they focus on early education and re-education for those that are using the roadway, driving, and achieving really good results. So that education really is geared towards all population, but really focused on the demographics that they're seeing based on data and research. And they are societal based. So a lot of the infrastructure and resources that they're utilizing really reflects the values that they have as a society. When you get out of the airport in Helsinki, you'll see that everything is really geared towards fun and enjoyment of a public space. They take care of the people that really need access, and you can see that from Helsinki Airport, getting to their preferred transit is really well designed and detailed guidance. So tactile for people who have vision needs. They're guided right to the preferred mode. Preferred mode in Helsinki and Finland is obviously walking, biking, and transit. This leads right to their train station. Train station is very bright. It has a very welcoming feel. It's geared towards access for all abilities. You'll see on this picture, person, and in the reflection there, person sitting next to me is a person working in a bakery. So he has hamburger buns, a big bin that he's taking transit and train to deliver. It's used by all people. And you come out of the train station in Helsinki, and it's an environment where everyday tasks can be achieved, right? So you have supermarket, you have shops for daily needs. And again, it's really geared towards people with all abilities. Again, good guidance for people who have mobility challenges. And right outside reflects the type of uses that people have. It's snowy and it's cold, but again, you have people in wheelchairs, you have people riding bikes, utilizing this preferred mode. And really the value of the system is that they provide maintenance, that access, so that it's accessible by those by the preferred travel mode. This is a crosswalk right outside the train station. You can see, again, geared towards that heavy usage for people who are walking and biking, and it's comfortable and safe and lit. It's maintained well. And it's reflected by what they do. 4 in the morning, I heard these snow clearing activities happen. You can see that they leverage both public and private sector to clear the sidewalk, clear the roadway. It's the mode that they depend on, and so they provide the resources to provide that access. roadways are designed is that self-enforcing. So it's narrow for that lower speed, provides that mixture of usage. And then again, the public space is geared towards that high quality travel environment for all modes. Yeah, and you don't think that there'll be a lot of bicycling in this type of weather, but again, there are people with child seats that are taking their children to school. This activity happens in these type of conditions, and so and it's reflected by that they're making these facilities accessible and safe. And then, some of the things that they do to encourage, again, snow clearing and plowing, they create these piles to daylight the locations. Again, it slows the vehicle movement and improves safety. And sometimes the snow clearing is an activity for residents. And again, you see the kids out there enjoying the environment in the middle of the night. They travel in all modes. A lot of people are walking and taking transit. Plenty of transit available. Again, it's the preferred mode, and that's the mode that abundant and very easy to use. And then the infrastructure is set up so that it encourages the right behavior. So this is a signal to a side street. And you can see that the signal is advanced. So it's right prior to the crosswalk. If you pass the crosswalk, you can't see the signal, and then there is no indication for the driver. So I've noticed at certain locations that a driver will pull up beyond it, and they don't get the signal call because they're beyond the location where they need to stop. It's sort of enforces that proper behavior. This is a roundabout at a ferry and a train in a tram station. You can see the tram goes right through the middle of the roundabout. As vehicles travel to the roundabout, there's a series of flashing lights that's triggered by the tram that they have to yield. So again, it's really integration of the preferred mode, and that preferred mode. You can see if the video goes through here. Maybe not. Go through. So there's a tram on the other side, people getting off, getting to the ferry terminal. This is a wide accessible path to the ferry terminal. There's a multi-use path that provides access to people on bicycles. And that crossing, these stations to the left there, is raised. So again, even in these snowy conditions, traffic calming is built in as part of the infrastructure. Really carefully designed and really encourages that right behavior. Throughout the city, in this Finnish community, people who are walking, they need a place to use the restroom. These are abundant again. They're clean, heated, provides that daily needs. And then recreation wise and travel, they're well maintained, comfortable, and separated. This is an arterial street with sidewalks and two-way cycle path on a major arterial street. And we got to visit the actual city. This is a suburban city, Naantali, that actually achieved 0 fatalities. That location looks like this. This is a suburban city. It's kind of a resort community, high speed facilities to access, but separated facilities for people walking and biking. Of course, it wasn't that way when we visited. It was actually snowy again, but the infrastructure is well maintained for access. And what they told us is that this city, Naantali, made a policy choice that any intersection that needs improvement for a traffic signal, they're going to put in a roundabout. So there will be no traffic signals as part of the city infrastructure, because they know that the roundabouts are the safest infrastructure. And when you're crossing these locations, they have treatments that provide that safety. They have these paths that are well lit and provide the really good access for all the community users. Here's a location that needed a treatment. A roundabout construction underway and finished. And so as identified these infrastructure improvements, they putting roundabouts. And what we saw was people, fathers and children walking and back from schools and daily tasks, school children walking by themselves and having these paths that's really comfortable to access to their homes. We also saw people utilizing these paths to do their everyday activity. This is a person in a mobility device carrying a wheelchair to a supermarket. It's that accessible in this community. And another policy that really effective that we learned a lot from is that in Finland, they actually have automated speed enforcement. It's put in these little stanchions that you can see in the red circle there. Those are locations with fixed speed cameras. Not all of them are active. There are shells so that the police will put the devices in as needed. And they have a system that's what's called day fine. So it's not a fixed fine, but it's adjusted to your income. And so a famous case and a more recent one, multi-millionaire businessman, was hit with the world's highest traffic fine. So it really does change behavior, and it shown about a 24% reduction in fatality after the implementation of these automated speed enforcement. Finally, on the way back, we got a chance to stay in Iceland. It was a canceled flight, so we were forced to stay overnight. It was very chaotic, and so we stayed in this hotel. And I got a chance to go out and walk early before taking the shuttle back to the airport. What I noticed in Iceland is a facility is very similar to a lot of our suburban community, a higher speed, but they made some really impressive design choices that I think we want to emulate. Separated pathways, islands that really channelize and slow vehicles. This is the location just outside the hotel. Just up the street where the new development is, a bus lane. And then you can see on the right, that's the accessible pedestrian signal. That's the pedestrian push button. On it, you can see a raised diagram. A person who has vision loss can see what the configuration of an intersection is. 2 travel lane, an island, 2 travel lane, and a bicycle lane that they'll be crossing just prior to navigating. Now, that's kind of a thoughtful approach that allows someone to be able to navigate an intersection like this. You can see the bicycle signals, separated pedestrian crossings. The level of detail of how to navigate an intersection is really, really impressive. Gives really good design choices, tactile choices for someone that need that to navigate an intersection like this. Separated, it's just a slight elevation change. And then speed reduction with the raised crossings where people are crossing with the vehicle traffic. And again, this is that location with snow, right? Iceland has snow and other inclement weather. And at this location, this was a retrofit. Prior to that raised crossing, there was even a cushion that was put in, speed cushion, to really slow down traffic. And you can see some of the plow challenges, but it's been implemented, and they're seeing positive safety values there. This is the roadway leading to the hotel, and you can see it's a pretty large facility. To the left, you'll see a separated path. Again, on these type of facilities, there's that separation that's provided. This is a freeway again. You can see the separated path on the right, far right, that traverses, and to the left, you can see another separated path that provides a safe walking and biking alternative for people in Iceland. And this is one of the interchange areas where you can get through. It's lit, it's wide, it's very comfortable. As you navigate these paths, you're provided access to the transit facilities. And again, it's very clean and accessible. Our van trip back, you can see the separated path to the left is a 2-way cycle track. At the intersections, it's a very large pedestrian refuge area, again, provides a comfortable crossing, very well done. And then the crossing at these locations are raised so that the vehicles that are turning to the sidewalk level have to slow down again from the higher speed facility to the lower speed facilities. And with that, I'll turn it over to Yinhai.
Thanks, Dan Ho. Let me share my screen. So John has covered the general background, and Dan Ho talked about the successful applications of the design cases in Netherlands. So I would like to share my thoughts about the new technologies. So from the previous research, we can see vulnerable road user factors and driver factors. These combined are considered as the human factors. Vehicle factors and the roadway factors, these are all very important things for transportation safety. And previously, we've been emphasizing on education, enforcement, and also engineering maintenance. In the recent years, we just see a lot more new technologies coming out, and these technologies could be applied to improve like the human factors, vehicle factors, roadway factors, try to reduce the crashes. So today I'm going to just briefly show you in case some of these technologies from like the human side, vehicle side, and the roadway side. So we all know that every 52 minutes, somebody is killed in the driving under influence crash. And there are some technologies that we have tested before, just like this particular picture shows. This is actually a technology. We call that ignition interlock device. A driver could test their breath, try to find out the alcohol percentage. If they are drunk, they cannot start a vehicle. I know NHTSA started a proposal and try to install all these devices in new cars in 2025. I'm not sure exactly where we are for that particular technology. And in recent years, there are a lot of new developments about using machine learning-based human face tracking technology, try to find if the drivers are focusing on their driving, they're distracted, or they're driving under influence. So these technologies have been tested in many different scenarios, and some vehicle manufacturers are considering installing these devices in their new cars. I consider these things will significantly reduce the driving under influence kind of crashes. So that's from the driver side, and certainly on the roadway side, we see if we could increase the visibility of pedestrian crossing and also other objects on the road or near the road, that would be very helpful. So study found high visibility crosswalks can reduce pedestrian injury crash up to 40%. So we see such applications in Seattle area, like the pedestrian walk highlighted with the light emitting road start. And there are also flashing lights when you push the pedestrian cross button. So these are all great technology, not too expensive to install, but have been proven very effective. And also on the roadway user side, sometimes they're just a blind spot from the vehicle driver side or from the bicyclist or pedestrian side. So this kind of cellular vehicle to everything technologies will be helpful. So a bicycle rider may receive the message about a potential upcoming vehicle, even the bicyclist cannot see it, right? Also on the vehicle side, the drivers may notice there's a vehicle crossing right in front. So I think these things have been actively tested, there are some new technologies available, and more will be available soon. So also on the vehicle side, we see a lot of newer vehicles with somehow autonomous driving functions. So the left picture shows a screen of Tesla. I see a lot of people driving Tesla now. I counted on the UW parking lot. I think about 30 to 40% of the cars parked there are Tesla vehicles. And almost every Tesla vehicle, you will see this kind of surrounding environment. When you're driving, you'll see the vehicles surrounding you, and also pedestrians. So this kind of sensor-based data, not only to assist the driving, but also make the vehicle informed about the potential danger around the vehicle. So I think such data will be more valuable. You know, there could be more applications developed on top of these data sets. Almost every newer vehicle, they have this advanced driver assistance system. Just like you are not aware of something or the vehicle already slowed down, you are not aware, there will be normally the warning sound, or the vehicle could automatically stop. So these technologies, I think, are very practical, even they are not in the full autonomous phase, but they are definitely helpful to reduce the number of crashes. On the infrastructure side, I see a lot of research ongoing talking about how we could integrate the sensor input and the infrastructure's operational functions, and also letting the drivers know, like the vehicle's potential operational changes, like the traffic signal control changes, or the vehicles, you know, who may have like a conflict with this current vehicle. So there's just the new technologies on the way. And today I just want to showcasing one particular research developed by the PacTrans Star Lab at the University of Washington. So we see the classical data collection way, you know, like the left picture shows. There are just a lot of sensors mounted, and each sensor is producing their own data set in its own format and stored in its own database. Even you have a lot of data at the same location, but trying to integrate these data is not easy. So the Star Lab researchers, we combine different kind of sensors and put their input in one device. So we have like a cooperative sensing, and also using computer vision and edge computing technologies, try to process the data, and we can extract the information needed by the traffic operation engineers or needed by, you know, other professionals for this particular road. So in particular, we designed this technology and also engineered it, try to make it applicable in very cold weather conditions, like a -40 or like a very hot weather conditions. And we try to be like sensing not only the roadway, but also the surrounding environment. So very often you see black ice happens when the temperature is cold enough, right? And also the humidity is reaching to a certain level. So if we could use this particular technology to collect such data, and also combine the data and inform the traffic operators, and also inform the road users, the drivers, about what's going on, we could avoid a lot of potential crashes. And also, we have a lot of, you know, the roadside units deployed, but I see a bigger problem with this roadside unit is there's no input, like the sensors may not supporting the needs of the roadside unit. And also the roadside unit passing the data to traffic control center, but the center engineer may not know exactly what to do with this, because only limited locations are equipped with this kind of roadside unit. So if we could combine the roadside unit function with the traffic sensing function, a lot of control could happen in local area, even without having to go through the traffic control center. That's another important design concept for this particular technology. So in this master sensor technology, we have built up like the object detection, object tracking, density detection, human pose detection, road surface detection, road visibility detection, all these modules. And by combining applications of these modules, we could detect and classify vehicles and also measure speed and even highlighting the vehicle trajectory and predict potential conflicts of different vehicles or vehicle and pedestrian or bicyclist. We could also detect vulnerable road users such as pedestrians or bicyclists and try to classify what kind of road user they are and counting them and also predict the potential danger because we know vehicle trajectory and these pedestrian or bicyclist trajectory. And by also adding the environmental information, we could get a much better idea about the road surface situation, right? Is that dry, wet, or covered by black ice? And also sense the roadway visibility. So here are just some examples. Given the time constraint, I will just go through these things quickly. For detection of vehicles and classifying them, we use this particular system and implementing our machine learning approach on this edge device with very limited computing power, such as like a NVIDIA TX2. But these algorithms have been successfully implemented and deployed on these edge devices, and they've been tested in a lot of different locations. So we see the vehicle detection and the classification accuracy is pretty good. And also by combining the vehicle sensing, road surface sensing, and also environmental sensing, we can tell like, is this particular section of a road with a dry pavement or wet pavement or covered by black ice or covered by snow or partially covered by snow. So all these things happen on the same device. And if we know road surface condition is not good, we can certainly inform like the traffic operation centers or like the road users to pay attention. So one of the most important variable for driving is actually the visibility. But we don't have a lot of visibility sensors because they are quite expensive. I heard each unit is at least $30,000. But if we could turn all our surveillance video cameras into a visibility sensor, I think that would be a huge gain, right? So that we have so many surveillance video cameras, and simply by deploying a software, we can make them also measuring visibility. I think that would be super helpful. So this slide shows actually the original like image on the lower left side, and you see we extract the scattering map using our technology, and you can see a dehazed image, which we can see very clearly, right? So by looking at the scattering map, we're able to tell what is the visibility. And this visibility's accuracy is also quite good. Even we don't have the ground truth data, and we use the sensor, like a visibility sensors data as the ground truth, but the visibility sensor may not be 100% accurate either, right? So, but anyway, I think this level of accuracy make it good for traffic transportation agencies to use to measure the visibility. And we also need to have like the communication between the system and the users, right? So we develop a phone app and people can access to see like the live traffic condition, the sensor detected data, and also any warning messages like there's black ice here, please drive slow, or like take some particular countermeasure, right? So this information is available to use. And the technology can also be used for like detecting potential conflicts at intersections. And also like we deployed our own technology, try to increase the accuracy. Here you see the left side picture is we just grab a computer science model and try to detect pedestrian movements at the intersection. You see this accuracy is not very good, right? Because that model is not developed for transportation applications. But the right side picture is based on our own model. So we consider the traffic conditions, and this particular methodology captured 100% of the pedestrians moving in this area. Yeah, so make an example application for this particular technology. We selected US 97. You all know US 97 is one of the most dangerous corridor, if not the most dangerous one, in Washington State. There are 24 fatalities and 430 serious injury crashes since 2021. And there are a lot of challenges like poor visibility, uncontrolled intersection, etc. So we deploy our sensor technology here with the Yakima Nation engineering division. So with the help from WSDOT, we put the sensor up, and the sensor's installation caused a lot of attention in the local media. And over the past several years, we gathered a lot of very important information, like in this intersection, there are 70% of vehicles, large trucks or agricultural vehicles, no pedestrian like crossing mark, but there are a lot of pedestrians using this particular location, the weather challenges, etc. So after several years, and we see the value of this technology application, and this particular project was given the Federal Highway Build a Better Mousetrap Innovative Project Award, and also the Best All-Round Award in 2023. So now let's conclude with this particular example. So on Highway I-81 near the Hydrants exit in Pennsylvania in 2022, there was a big crash with over 50 vehicles, crashed together, and 6 people killed. So if we have such a technology, we may potentially prevent this tragedy from happening in several critical points. One is when we see snowing, right? Visibility gets lower. We can generate a warning. The second, when the snow covers road, we could generate a road surface condition warning. And when the first crash happened, we could generate instant warning, right? So there are multiple points that we could generate a warning message for the agency to come to do something to prevent this tragedy from happening. So anyway, that's my quick summary of some new technologies. And I will pass the microphone to Tim McCall.
Tim,
Tim,
you're on
Yep.
mute.
Thank you. Sorry. My screen changed on me a little bit. So wanted to thank you all for inviting me here. So I wanted to kind of briefly talk a little bit about sustainable urban transportations. I can't talk. Transportation operations within Germany. And this is a little bit more of my personal experience and some observations that I made as a user of the transportation system there, and also visiting a traffic transportation operations center in Germany. So a lot of times when we think about Germany, we often think about, the Autobahn, really. We think about, free open spaces, high speeds, unlimited speed limits. And this is kind of the vision that we often get. This is an image that I took between Pirmasens and Zweibrücken in the Rheinland-Pfalz region. But when we get close to the cities, we often see more of our traditional traffic management, lower speeds. And in this case here, we have some dynamic signs that are rotating flip signs. These signs date back to when I was a kid, and obviously they're showing their age now. And some of these close to the city have been changed out significantly. But we often see more of our our highway operations practices in place here. But then we come into the city and the system completely changes. One thing that you'll notice driving in Germany is that a lot of cars are small. It doesn't mean that we don't see any of the large pickup trucks like we see here, but one of the big things is that there's on-street parking, limited parking, and the road, the driving behavior does change significantly from the highways, and that's quite common even here in the U.S. One of the things that I did want to point out was that in 2013, the GIZ, which is roughly translated the Academy for International Cooperation, put together a document to highlight 10 principles for sustainable urban transportation. The GIZ recognized that collisions take a toll, especially on vulnerable groups such as pedestrians and cyclists, and really wanted to push for more pedestrian and transit user and cyclist-centric transportation modes. So this was the first iteration that was actually provided to me when I went to the Traffic Management Center in Berlin. Last year, they did revitalize this document, and they did provide a couple other items. So rather than just looking at clean vehicles, they want to look at electrifying all vehicles, and then really trying to win support from stakeholders and citizens that may be apprehensive to this type of change, and then really empowering cities to avoid, shift, and improve. So really kind of move away from the car-centric operations and really improve the street environment. You'll also notice too that there is a push for more complete streets, and that's something that we have really embraced here in the state of Washington. So a couple of things that I wanted to highlight. These are the most recent 10 principles. One of the things was getting the infrastructure right, advancing smart mobility management, and enhancing public transport and smart mobility. Notice that there's a lot of smart mobility, and it ends up being kind of phone access. But really getting the infrastructure right was really kind of focusing on real-time traffic conditions as well, and providing real-time information to roadway users. So incident management isn't too much unlike what we see in the US. We've adopted some of these concepts like active lane management, variable speed systems. So in urbanized areas or congested zones, you will often see these overhead signs, much like you would if you're driving on some of this, like for example, I-5 northbound into Seattle, where we have lane control and then speed management to provide platoon protection, but also provide speed harmonization in the system. One thing that you'll notice if you do go to Germany is that you will see CCTV cameras, but they aren't shared publicly. So that is one thing that I did want to highlight there. And then one thing about getting the system right was, and Dong Ho also mentioned this too in his presentation, is that traffic laws are strictly enforced. There's a lot of automated enforcement. You'll see some of those old school pylons, and then they still use some of the old school camera boxes along the Autobahn and some of the thoroughfares to catch folks that are speeding. One of the neat things that are coming up in a lot of the new vehicles these days has been the use of V2X, where we have information regarding speeds coming into the car, and they do advise a driver when you're exceeding the speed limit by a certain degree. It is a really helpful tool. And then one thing of note that I did want to show in this picture here was they have so-called Umweltzone or environmental zones in some of the major urban centers within Germany, and that is really to kind of manage the to basically exclude vehicles that are heavy polluters and really can adversely ruin the air quality within those cities. Some cities are moving forward with banning diesel vehicles as well. I believe there are only 5 cities in Germany right now that have banned diesel vehicle operation within the city limits. Kind of going back to the earlier slide with the rotating signs, one of the big things that they've done is replacing old flip signs with hybrid message board inlaid signs. These allow travel time messaging, roadwork information, and detour messaging shown here. And here's an example of a travel time sign. So rather than just simply providing a travel time, they do provide a typical travel time, and then they add a delay to it. In this case, I was driving through this area and there was no delay, it was free flow. And this corridor here on the A66 is pretty crowded. In 2017, I had the opportunity to tour with a previous intern of mine, from the Northwest Region Traffic Management Center. The Verkehrsinformationszentrale in Berlin. It's located in the now closed Tempelhof Airport. And the building itself is an iconic structure because it was often dubbed the first modern international airport. The city facility contains both the state-operated control room as well as a public information office above the control room floor. And the public information facility is contract operated. However, the employees that actually do the hands-on operation of the system, including the several tunnels within the state of Berlin, are state employees. So this is kind of an overview. The facility that I actually toured was the information room upstairs. The control room floor was more or less a no-go zone for the public, but the actual public information center was actually kind of a unique aspect because these are the folks that were operating the variable message boards, a lot of the providing the traffic reports. There was actually a person in that space there that was providing regular traffic reports that accompanied the news at the top and bottom of the hour. One of the products that's also provided by that public information office is a really handy traffic information or transportation information center that can be used by various modes. So here you can see kind of a zoom in of more or less the center of Berlin, kind of in the vicinity of the Alexanderplatz. You can identify where traffic restrictions are in place, where road construction activities are in place, of course, your typical traffic conditions. And each one of these, you can actually click and identify what's taking place at those locations and what the duration of that roadwork activity is taking place. One other thing about this website is that it's not just unique to cars. It also identifies bicycle routes, long distance bicycle routes, but also provides information concerning bicycle theft. So here, this zone here in the vicinity of the Alexanderplatz is a high bicycle theft zone. So really a handy tool to have it at your fingertips. As mentioned earlier, they do operate a series of variable message signs of Wechselverkehrszeichen throughout Berlin, and they're also around other German cities as well. One of the unique things in this case with this messaging is that they are advising drivers to use caution when turning because there's a high collision zone up ahead. So I thought that was a pretty unique application and kind of an advertisement to motorists that there is a high collision zone ahead, just kind of giving them a heads up. Moving on to Frankfurt, I know a lot of folks have transited through Frankfurt Airport, but the city of Frankfurt is kind of a unique city. It is the hub for the, it's one of Germany's largest cities, about 700,000 people, kind of on par with the city of Seattle. It's a major transportation hub. It's the headquarters for many European banks. It's also the home for the European Central Bank. But one of the things that the city has recently embraced more and more has been bicycle sharing. And also one of the big things too here is that this whole corridor is really well covered with transit. Mostly it's all underground, U-Bahn, subway, and suburban rail. While there is some on-street parking, it's very limited, so folks are really encouraged to make use of transit throughout the city. And it's a really great example of really layered transportation opportunities. One thing I did want to highlight here is that we have this big shopping area called the Zeil, and it's also a large pedestrian zone. While there may be some deliveries that come into these facilities, they're generally cars, trucks are forbidden from coming through this area. Any motorized vehicles prohibited. And this kind of extends down to the Römerplatz, and there are also some nice restaurants in this area as well. Much like Berlin, Frankfurt also offers a really comprehensive website as well as a mobile phone application, not necessarily a mobile phone application, but a really handy mobile phone website that really allows transportation user to identify how they're moving about Frankfurt. They may opt to go by foot. they may use transit, they may use cars. In this case, I used the filter for pedestrians. And so they identify where the parking decks are. But one of the neat features here on the site is you'll see the little signals with the 3 dots with the yellow background within a circle. Those are signals that are set up to assist those with visual impairments. One of the other cool features about this is that it identifies where the escalators are, where there are publicly accessible water fountains and bathrooms. We often think forget about that. There are some folks that really need to know where bathrooms are before they can take a trip anywhere. So that's a really helpful website. The Mine Seal also provides real-time transit information. While it's a little bit weak on the bus side, it does provide real-time information concerning the U-Bahn and S-Bahn. So it does, really do a great job of providing the U-Bahn, street tram, and some bus routes and bicycle share information. So you can click on any of the bicycle share locations, identify how many bicycle share units are available. The only downfall is that this limitation of the Mine Seal website is, again, it only covers some bus routes, but it's only functional within the city of Frankfurt. But then comes the question, what about the suburbs and rural areas? In fact, I took a couple snapshots from when I went back to Europe this past summer. A lot of Germany is covered by a myriad of regional transportation authorities or associations. The greater Frankfurt area is covered by the Rhein-Main-Verkehrsverbund, and it's basically it almost functions similar to like an MPO of sorts, but it covers Frankfurt, Mainz, Darmstadt, and Wiesbaden, so it really allows for some level of intercity commuting. These transportation systems offer some suburban rail, regional rail, and bus options to communities outside of the largest cities. And one of the elements within the 10 principles is ease of purchase of tickets. One of the cool things about the RMV app, which is available on iTunes, is that not iTunes, yeah, the iTunes, is that it does provide a real ease of access of purchasing tickets. It's real easy to buy a ticket on the train. They do a lot of ticket enforcement on transit within Germany, just to make sure that folks are being honest. So it is a really handy tool to have available to you. The mobile website too offers some real-time information. So in this case here, I try to provide a trip from Waldorf, which is south of the Frankfurt airport, to the Hauptwache, which is right at the end of the Zeil. And it does identify that, hey, you can take the S7, which is normally a suburban rail, but it's on a bus bridge. And so that is a really handy tool, and it lets you know where, that there's going to be some delay of getting to your connection to the S8. So it's a really handy tool to use if you are out there. These tools are also available similar tools are available in other countries as well. I know the Netherlands has an app called Flitsmeister that does offer a very similar kind of comprehensive transportation mode connections as well. Including Germany has identified and updated 10 principles for sustainable urban transportation. Cities such as Frankfurt and Berlin have implemented smart mobility and provide great connectivity between modes of transportation with real-time information. And I kind of wanted to close with this photo that I took from my hotel room in Würzburg to kind of highlight just the various modes and great connectivity among the modes. And I just want to thank you all for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Great presentations. We do have some really interesting questions we have about 15 minutes. So I'll try to, there's some common thread of questions. So I'll try to paraphrase them. Tiffany and Todd and some others had asked Dong Ho, are there challenges the United States faces in implementing the safe system countermeasures observed in Finland and Iceland? Are there low-cost enhancements from these countries that we can adopt in the near future? What longer-term enhancements should we begin to explore implementing in Washington State? I can break that question down too, if you'd like, Dong Ho.
Yeah, so I think the challenge for us is really trying to change some of our operation paradigm, right? So, you know, I think we need to quickly shift to that safe system approach. And as we do conduct our projects, make sure that we are looking at holistically, separating the modes, reducing speed in those environments where we want to, again, try to ensure that if there is a collision, you know, we're not going to be eliminating collisions, but the severity of the collisions. And a lot of our policies, I think that's also a challenge. So the Finland trip, we learned a lot about the automated enforcement. And so one of the provisos, the directive that we got from the legislature was test out speed systems and report back on the results. So the direct result of that trip, we're doing that. Another is really the societal value, and Finland and other European countries, they have a very low tolerance for people who are under the influence operating a vehicle. So the last legislative session to reduce the blood alcohol level to 0.05, that's going to come back again. 84% of the world operate under the 0.05, and so we're sort of the outlier. So there's a really good basis for that. I think for our implementation, I think we need to do a lot more quicker implementation to get those results that we want, which is, you know, a lot of times the speed management, implementing race features where we can. Roundabouts is a really great solution. I think we've been a leader in that. Getting them implemented in a more quicker fashion. And I think just our facility design for pedestrians and bikes, I think needs to be implemented again a lot quicker. I think this is one that there's a huge demand, and we need to gear up to deliver.
Great, thank you. This is just a question I had out of curiosity, Dong Ho. Are there things when you went to Finland and Iceland they were wanting to take back for their own knowledge? Are there things we're doing that they found successful that they wanted to implement?
I think they were very impressed with our again our approach to our complete streets implementation, right? So we have a very strong legislative priority to change how our operating system is set up. I think there's lots of example of low cost transit enhancements and improvements, things like what Scott Langer and Southwest Region just innovation on using, the shoulders for the lower speed environment. I mean, those are the things that at least our peers are interested in implementing themselves. And I think a lot of our ITS, what we were able to do with the data and implement safety projects fairly quickly using the data. I think the other is what Roger often mentions. We're value driven and data informed. So using that value system as really that North Star, and then using the data to make sure that we're making the right choices.
Great, thank you. John, what driver behavior trends in the United States necessitate a different approach to addressing safety compared to other countries? And then to expand on that, what specific action should we take to address these trends?
So the issues, I think Dong Ho mentioned, the impairment, and now we're getting more and more driving with cannabis and those types of things and poly drugs. It's one of the issues. There's systems that we can put in vehicles that help that. We also need to take a look at how we design and operate roads. We designed them in the past for speed and safety at high speed, which is kind of oxymoron because you're increasing severity to reduce total injuries. We got to work through our culture and engineering to kind of change that philosophy. That's why we saw the definition change. But it now gets to the decision-making processes. Can we make the decisions to help drive down severity? Can we reduce lane width? Can we reallocate lanes to do different purposes? That's where you saw a lot of the change, and it's across the nation or across the world. You see the biggest changes where the people are most willing to change their practices in their engineering side, in their planning side, in their culture side.
Great, thank you. And to expand on that, Kareem, and I believe you answered it in the chat too, but Kareem had asked about stress and if we're seeing anything related to the impacts of stress on human behavior.
So when you talk about stress, you're talking often about things that will occur that are also related. So you get higher levels of distractions. You get choice behaviors that are different than what you'd want. So people taking higher risk, pulling out quickly, doing things that they wouldn't otherwise do, reacting versus thinking proactively through their travel system. The US in comparison to the international, kind of across the board as far as human factors is concerned, it's night and day. If I could change one thing, it would be to bring human factors people into a lot of the discussion that we haven't done in the past, and separate that. I'm not talking about human behavior. I'm talking about human factors where behaviors are affected, but those capacities, limitations, the way that people operate, we have to think about it differently. And then the one other thing I'd add is that if you think about people crossing a road, walking along a road with high speed traffic and no system essentially to walk on, and you ask me why they cross the road at a specific location, I'll tell you why. Because when they go through their personal safety equation, it seems safer to walk across the road. They get into judgment error at that time. So we need to start thinking as engineers more about the whys of what's happening versus modifying and putting some countermeasure in because of some change that we want after the crashes have always occurred. So, why wait for a crash to occur before you do something about it? In other words.
Great, thank you. Yin Hai, what regulatory differences are in place in Europe, China, Singapore that enable us to advance innovation and that enable them to advance innovation and technology more effectively than the United States? Are there changes to federal regulations that could help us better leverage technology and innovation? And then if you have any examples.
This is a very good question. Actually, I think different countries are doing things in a very different way. And John was talking about maybe human crossing the street, they have their own judgment, right? So that made me recall, like in large cities in China, like in Beijing or in Shanghai, there are a lot of fences installed, like in the busy commercial areas. Even you want to cross, there's no way you could cross, right? So you have to cross through maybe either an underground tunnel or go about the bridge. So I think the cities or the government, they may have a clear guidance about what to do in this particular area and make the investment, and also they enforce that, right? So I think we really have a lot of freedom, at different levels, right? So like a city decide what to do here, maybe state and the county decide on different things. A lot of these good things, we identify maybe through our previous research or through today's presentation, the discussion, just like Dong Ho showcased several very good applications in the roadway design, and how do you avoid people from making mistake. I think there's a document published by, I think, the Netherlands government about their like a sustainable safety approach, right? They have third versions already talking about all the details. A very important thing, without using very fancy technology is let's try our best to make people, free of those mistakes, right? So a lot of mistakes is caused by confusion. If we could clarify that part in our roadway design, we could avoid a lot of, crashes, just simply that way. I think the government may have their own approach, right? Now the WSDOT have this safe system approach, but how do we implement that, right? So is there any like a resources supporting that, or the government enforcing, every agency must be following that. I think these are still not very clear to me. So I think each city or each county or state have their own way of doing these things. Even there's a very good system or approach outlined. How do we follow those things, right? A lot of these things are actually how do we set our goals right and following the right approach. Very often we focus on improving vehicle efficiency in our design and did not really consider safety and human is the center of the design.
Great, thank you, Yin-Hai. There's one last question for Tim. It sounds like you always have your transportation lens on when you travel. Are there any technologies or insights you've gained from these countries that you've applied to your work in Olympic region?
Yeah, so a few things that we've been trying to do at the statewide TMC level has been trying to improve our website in certain ways. We know that we get a lot of feedback from non-motorized travelers that use our system. For example, we have certain routes that are for example, our bridges that have shared use paths associated with them. A lot of times our maintenance vehicles do obstruct those sections of roadway. And so those roadway users have to use another means or hop over the barrier and walk the shoulder, which is not ideal for non-motorized roadway users. So how do we get that information out to them? And that's still an ongoing effort on my end that I'm really trying to push. In terms of technology, I think one thing that we've done, at least statewide, more so the Seattle area, has been the application of active traffic management to provide some level of platoon protection, as well as speed harmonization for those really congested corridors in and around Seattle. And then we've also implemented some variable speed systems up on the pass as well to kind of at least get folks to slow down as they're approaching the adverse weather at the top of the pass. Specifically for Olympic region, one of the things that we're looking at doing is right sizing our VMSs for more arterial urban applications. So one thing that we've been doing is not just looking at what has been done here, but also looking at what's been done in Seattle specifically as ways to right size, so to speak, our ITS applications so they're not freeway, monster freeway-ish applications in an urbanized arterial setting. So it is a little bit more palatable for not just the non-motorized users, but also still legible for the motorized travelers of our roadways.
Great, thank you. We have about 2 minutes left, and I just wanted to close with thanking the panel for sharing their knowledge. I think there's so much more that we can learn, as well as that we can share internationally on how to achieve a safe system. I think the big message I hope you all can walk away with is wherever you walk, if it's in your neighborhood or if it's through traveling, to keep your eyes open and just explore different possibilities. Our purpose of this webinar was to give you a window of these possibilities to lead to achieving zero. It takes our professional village, including those working on policy, planners, engineers, maintenance workers, academics, and innovators. When we work collectively, we can reimagine what and who we're serving with safety as our priority. We're all in this together, and when we bring our collective minds together, we can move these numbers down. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining, and we did record this, so if you want access to it, shoot me an email. I'm happy to share it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.